welcome to our webinar, Put Your Debt on a Diet. I'm Amy Lenz, the Senior Director of Learning and Development with Money Management International, and we appreciate your attendance at this pre-recorded webinar. As you know, we were scheduled to have this webinar live on March 14th. However, due to concerns related to the coronavirus, we have moved it to an online pre-recorded webinar. I want to introduce the Empower series. The Empower series is a nonprofit that works with people towards their goals and self-improvement, including financial achievement. And the Empower series would like to thank the Urban League of Houston for their space. Normally these courses would be held there. Also, Comerica Bank that provides funding for the Empower series. Money Management International, which is my organization, we are a 501c3 nonprofit credit and housing counseling agency, and we are happy to be able to do this webinar for the Empower series. And we'd like to thank Frost Bank for their generous funding in the Houston area that allows us to do community education. You can visit the Empower series website at empowerseries.com and check out their future events. So I want to start out by talking a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to look at calculating the cost of credit, creating what we call a fast track payoff plan. We're going to talk about stepping down our spending and creating a budget. We're going to talk about ways we can start saving towards our goals. We all have personal goals, business goals, financial goals for the future, and we're going to talk about how to start saving. We're going to also look at avoiding the impact on our long-term savings and our retirement that credit can have. So let's get started. Is this you? This is really a lot of us. We have a saying around my group that credit is easy and debt is hard. And I feel like that's really true for people. We don't really know how we get so far in debt. For some of us, it could be a major life event, such as a job loss, a loss of income or hours, could be a medical situation, could be a birth or a death or a divorce or some other kind of life event that's out of our control. But for many of us, it also could be that we have not made wise choices in our spending, or we didn't really understand the cost of credit. Lots of reasons that we get into debt. And so we are going to shift from in debt to looking at how to get out of debt. So it doesn't really matter how we got here as much as it matters what we do from here. So we're going to look at a typical family. This is the Alvarez family, and they're like a lot of families. They've accumulated debt. They've got almost $17,000 in debt. There are a lot of statistics related to the average credit card debt per person or per household, and you can look at those different studies and you're going to see a little bit different number. But let's just say that the Alvarez family is typical. They are not out of the realm of possibility for the average sort of household debt. This is where a lot of people find themselves. They're a young family, so they've bought some furniture, or they've had expenses related to their first child. Now they're expecting a second. They've maybe had moving expenses as they've gone from an apartment to a house or things like that. These things start to add up. And they have actually used credit to supplement their living expenses. Instead of saving up for furniture purchase, they bought on credit. And that happens to a lot of us. So the Alvarez family is typical. They also don't really have a lot in savings. And there are several studies out there that show really upward of 40 or even 60 or more % of Americans could not withstand a $400 to $1,000 expense, some kind of emergency or unexpected expense, without resorting to credit cards to make that purchase or to deal with that emergency. It depends on the study that you look at, whether or not that's a $400 to $1,000. But if you really think about it, that might be tires, or that might be a trip to the emergency room with a copay for a child that injures themselves, or it might be an unexpected vet bill for a pet. There are lots of things that can happen. And so Sometimes, we're using credit to supplement our monthly living expenses. Sometimes we're using credit in emergency situations. So we want to look at how do we shift out of that and start shifting towards envisioning and accomplishing our dreams and our goals. So first, let's look at a little more closely at the Alvarez situation. So the Alvarez family has 4 credit cards. They've got an electronic store card, they've got a department store card, and then they've got 2 sort of national bank type cards. And they have different amounts that they owe on each of these and varying interest rates from 10.25% up to 20.7% on their electronic store. And we can also see their minimum payment. So they owe about almost $17,000, and they're making a little over $300, almost $340 a month in their minimum payment. And this is pretty typical. And so they've just sort of absorbed this $340 expense into their budget, into their spending. And this is just what they do every month. They pay those minimums, okay? And that's what a lot of people do. So how much does it cost us to do that? How long will it take them to pay off their cards if they go with just paying minimum? So we're going to look at how much it costs, we're going to look at how long it takes, and then we're going to look at some options for making some different choices to get out of debt. So here are 4 choices, A, B, C, or D. So which one do you think it is? Do you think it's 3 or 12 years, or do you think it's 20 or 30 years? Well, at minimum, at paying the minimum balances, it would take the Alvarez family 30 years to pay off this credit card debt. And why is that? That just seems so crazy. Like, how could it be that long? Well, the reason is because during those early years, if you look from left to right, that's our number of years. In those early years, they're barely paying off any of the principal. They're mostly paying interest. So almost all of that $340 that they're paying out every month is going towards the interest on the credit cards, not the principal balance. So over time, it's dropping very, very slowly until they get way out there in the 10, 12-year mark before it really starts, dropping more towards paying off the principal versus the interest. So if they keep doing what they're doing, all those things they bought are going to be they're going to be gone. They're going to be in the trash, or they're going to be sold, or they're going to be given away to charity, and probably not even things that they can use. And worse, if it was things like eating out, those aren't even things that they own, right? Those are just consumables that have come and gone, and now they're still paying on those years and years later. So that $50 dinner is really costing them, a lot more. So they want to change their situation. So how do they do that? So let's talk about getting in the fast lane of rapid recovery, what we call a rapid recovery plan. We're going to see how much it costs them in a few minutes as we look at these plans. But what we want to do is figure out a way to rapidly pay down the debt and then start building savings and start saving towards our real financial goals. Because I don't think any of us have as a financial goal, pay credit card company forever. That is not a goal, right? None of us want to do that. So the first step in our rapid recovery plan is not even really a financial goal. This is about making the commitment. And that's about having a family meeting and goal setting. Most of us want to go from point A to point B, which you can see in the graphic, as a straight line. That is the most direct route, the fastest way, the most efficient way. But a lot of us end up on this little curly, long way route. And a lot of us get derailed on our goals because we sabotage ourselves, which anybody who's ever been on a diet knows that a cookie never tasted so good as when you can't have it. A lot of us sabotage ourselves, but a lot of our family members may sabotage on purpose or not on purpose. If they don't know why we're doing things, if they aren't in agreement with it, then, they may not feel the same need to stop the spending that you do. So number one is making this family meeting. Even upper elementary age children can understand, as a family, we have these goals. We're not going to take on new debt. That might mean we have some changes in our household. Might mean we don't do as many things. It might mean we don't have as many activities different ways we might save money. But the first thing is for spouses or significant others that are in a household together should have a family meeting and set their goals and talk to all the other household members and maybe even extended family. I don't know about you, but if you have one of those families that wants to have a big party and give gifts and go out to eat at the restaurant for like every family birthday, there may need to be some conversations with extended family as well about your goals. So the feelings don't get hurt, because there's a lot of emotions tied up in money. So step one is making this commitment, having the family meeting, being on the same page, standing together, united when things start to come at you. You can also contact your lenders about your interest rates. If you have good credit, your lenders may be willing to lower your interest rate if you ask them to. Not all will do that. In fact, most won't, but some might. Some will only do it if you maybe have a hardship situation, but others, if you say, well, I've been a good customer all this time, what can you do for me? Some of them may be willing to lower your interest rates, and that is, certainly part of the battle, because the higher the interest rate, the more you're going to be paying in interest. So step one is just making the commitment and doing what you can as a family, really outside of your financial piece. Okay, so now we've made the commitment, we've talked to our family, everybody's on board. What comes next? So we're going to sit down and we're going to face the music. We're going to write down all of our debts, and we are going to look at the amount owed, the interest rate, and the minimum payment. And so we can get that off of all of our bills. So we're going to open them up, the most current one, or go online, because you can see all of that on your online account profile. Get all of your credit cards. Now, right now, we're not going to include anything like student loans or cars or homes, but we're just going to include that revolving debt. So all of that type of credit card debt. Let's put it all down and just add it up. Maybe we've never done that. Maybe we've only been doing the minimum payment thing, and we don't even know how much we owe in aggregate, in total, with all of our cards. So that's step one. How much do we owe? Write it all down. We'll look at the interest rate. We'll look at the payments, okay? Once we do that, then we're going to choose a repayment method, a pay down method. And the way we do that is one of two ways. First, we might choose a rapid account reduction. So for some people, achieving a small goal along the way is important. So maybe if I pay off one card, I'm going to feel that sense of accomplishment that keeps me going. When there's all kinds of psychology around like losing weight or doing any kind of goal where you have little intermediate goals, and if you achieve a goal and you get to check something off, it makes you feel good. So for some people, this low balance method, being able, especially if you have maybe a really small credit card that doesn't have much of a balance, that might be something that you want to do and makes you feel an accomplishment. The other method you might choose is what's called rapid interest pay down. So you target the highest interest credit card. And the reason you do that is because the higher interest card is costing you the most money and will have the biggest impact on saving money if you choose to target and pay down that credit card in most cases. So you can pay down based on the balances, or you can pay down based on the highest interest rate. Either one will work. One may give you a little bit better option than the other. So let's take a look at how we do the rapid recovery amplifier. So whichever method you pick, what you are going to do is pick an amount. Like we've picked 50 here, but it could be anything. It can be $1, $10, $50, $100, whatever you can afford. And we will, in a minute, talk about, if you're sitting there saying, wait a minute, I can't afford anything, we're going to talk about how you find some money for this rapid recovery amplifier. So let's just say it's $50. So what you do is you take that $50 and add it to the minimum payment of the one particular card that you've chosen, either the lowest balance or, in this case, in this example, the highest interest rate. So instead of paying $25 to the electronic store, I'm going to pay $75. So instead of paying $337.65 as my minimum payment every month, I'm going to be paying $387.65. And I'm going to target all of that $50 to the electronic store to amplify my payment. So let's see what happens over time. So I start out with the electronic store replacing the minimum balance, of 25 with the 75. And I pay on that card 75 a month, and then I pay the minimums on the other cards until the first card is paid off. Now, if you're like most people, if you are just paying on a credit card and you pay it off, what happens to that monthly payment? For most of us, I call it being released into the wild. Suddenly, I have 25 or 75 more dollars in my pocket. And I think, well, I can treat myself to a thing or a dinner or a movie or whatever it is. And before you know it, you've released that $75 into the wild. So we are not going to do that in the rapid recovery plan. When that $75 has finished paying down the electronics store, we add it to the next one, the next highest interest rate, the department store. And so then, instead of paying just the $15.64, we're going to pay the department store $90.64, and we're going to pay the other two their minimum payment until the department store is paid off. And then we take that $90.64 and we do not release it back into the wild. We put it in with the Visa card, and we pay on that Visa card the $227.34, and we pay on the second one the minimum payment until Visa number one is paid in full. And then we take the entire $387 and we pay it on Visa number two until Visa number two is paid in full. What difference does this make? So way back when we saw, if the Alvarez don't do anything, if the Alvarez family just pays the minimum, they're going to take 30 years to pay this off. And at what price? Well, here's the answer. If I'm only paying minimums, I'm going to pay $22,000 in interest, not the principal. The principal is almost $17,000. So I'm going to pay $39,000 towards this original $17,000 credit card debt. It's going to take 30 years or more to pay it off. And that's if I don't charge anything else ever during the whole 30 years, which is pretty much unrealistic. Okay. So, I don't want to be on that little gerbil wheel where every month I just have to say, well, $300 or whatever is going towards my debt. Most people just sort to accept that. They sort of factor it into their budget and they just pay minimums. All right, we don't want to do that. Well, if I cannot afford any kind of amplifier, if I can just afford to pay minimums, then I should do that. But once the first one is paid off, and one of them, the lowest balance one, will pay off eventually, then I take that money and I don't release it. I put it towards the highest interest rate debt, and then I put it towards the next one and the next one. So even if I can only pay minimums on my cards, if I just take the money from the first one that's paid off and put it to the next one, and then take all of that and put it to the next one, I can still drop my payments and total interest and number of months considerably. I can go from 30 years down to 76 months. Okay, so a little over 6 years. And I can drop that interest down to $8,900, almost $9,000, which, still hurts me to even think about, but that's way better than $22,000. And if I can just find that $50 amplifier, look how much we can cut this down. We can get under 5 years and we can get under $6,500 in interest, which is pretty good. If we found a bigger amplifier, we'd be able to do even more. So this can really, really change your life and get you out of debt and move you towards the, the dreams and the goals, and out of this little, gerbil wheel of paying minimum payments. So how do I find that money to create the amplifier? Amy, that is the question, right? Like, if I could do that, then all my problems would be solved. So let's look at some ways. There are a lot of ways. Some are better than others. So take a look at these. We could win the lottery. We could borrow from family and friends. We could suspend or decrease our retirement contributions. We could use savings, or we could borrow against our retirement. We could use windfall amounts. That's things like tax returns or other money you come into like a gift. Or we could tighten our budget. And these are sort of listed from like the way we wish it was. I wish I would win the lottery, down to the least desirable, which is, suck it up and tighten my budget. So, all right, let's take a look here. Winning the lottery is not realistic, okay? It's the odds are against you. You spend a lot of money on it. Not the way we want to approach this. Borrowing from family and friends is usually not the right choice. You still owe the money, you just owe it to someone else, and you may be tempted to charge those cards back up, and then you would owe your family and the credit cards. That kind of goes the same way for, people ask about consolidation loans. Those could be good if you get a good interest rate, but you cannot then recharge all your cards because, you still owe the debt, so you don't want to have more debt. Do we want to suspend or decrease our retirement? No, not if we can help it. That is not an option we really want to pursue unless our debt is so overwhelming and our ability to pay it down is really in jeopardy. So that is not something we want to typically do because time is on your side when you're investing in retirement and you do not want to be taking away from that investment earning. We want to use savings or we want to borrow against our retirement. Some people say borrowing against a 401k, I'm paying myself back. Well, you're losing the earning power and the time value of that money. And if something happens, like you lost your job or whatever, then, if you don't have it repaid, you may end up with a withdrawal penalty. You may end up with a tax penalty. There's all sorts of ways that can go awry. And also it will hurt your overall long-term retirement. So we want to avoid that if we can. But using savings may be a strategy. In fact, I worked with one family a few years ago that had a debt, but they also had a lot of savings, and they were like doing this sort of really convoluted thing where they wanted to borrow from their retirement and do all this stuff, pay down this debt. And then when they told me how much they had in savings, I asked them, why aren't you just using your savings to pay down your debt? And they kind of looked at me like, yeah, we could do that. So sometimes it's right in front of our face, and we have thought of that. So if you do have savings above and beyond a solid emergency cushion, then consider that because you're going to be paying way more in interest on your cards than you're going to be earning in a regular savings. We can also use windfall amounts and should. If we get a tax refund, then that's your amplifier. Maybe your amplifier for 1 month is, $500 instead of $50 because you got a refund, or you get some kind of gift or other windfall. And of course, we want to tighten our budget because that's where our amplifier is really going to be found. So let's talk about a technique that we can use to tighten our budget, not forever, but for a while. So let's take a look at this. We call it our step-down spending. So you take an item, for example, this is going out to the movies, or maybe you take an item, lunch or dinners or any kind of craft or hobby, kids activities, cable TV, internet, bundle, all of that stuff. You take a look at that and you say, well, how can I step it down? I just need to find $50. And you don't have to necessarily step down all the way, but let's take a look at how this works. So let's say the basic way you're living right now is that you do a movie and popcorn and 2 drinks and you spend $45 at the movie. Well, maybe you go to the movies, but you don't get the popcorn and the drink. Or maybe you go to the matinee and you don't get the popcorn and the drink. Maybe you step down to a rental, something like one of the boxes that you can go like to the Walmarts and Target places and do a rental like the Red Box, and there's some others. I do that, but I wait for the coupon. So 2 weeks ago, I wanted to watch a movie, but I waited until I got a coupon in my email, and then I went to the box, and the coupon was for $1.50 off a rental, and the rental was only $1.80. So I got to see a movie for 30 cents. So I was pretty happy with that. So that could be a really good deal. And also, if you want to step all the way down to free, you can rent, or not rent really, but check out DVDs from the library. Now, they're not obviously going to be the things that are in the movie theater right now, so they might be a little bit older. But especially if you have kids and you're not too concerned about it being like the most current thing, you can get DVDs at the library and check them out with your library card. And I mean, in a big city like Houston, you're going to have, a lot to choose from. So that is one way to tackle step down spending. Now I want you to think about it. So maybe grab a scratch paper or just kind of sit and think through this example, which is cable or dish or direct TV type of situation. Think about how much that costs and how could you find, just $50. So let's pause for just a second and think about that. and then come back. All right, I'm going to show you what I came up with. It might be different than what you came up with. But if you're doing premium cable or you're doing Dish or DirecTV with, movie channel, I mean, it could be more than this, but at a minimum, something like premium cable with movie channels or, the top 200, 300, whatever stations, you're going to be paying a lot, $100 to $200 or more if you get into all the sports packages and things like that. Regular cable or like a lower package on, say, a Dish or DirecTV might be, $79. Basic might be $59. And then you can even go lower than that. You can go to streaming services. That's your Netflix and your Hulu. And a lot of people have done this. They've cut cable and they've cut the Dish and all that. I did it last year. I was a little iffy on it, but I now have one streaming service that streams channels. I'm not so much into shows as I am channels, so I went with Sling. There are others, but it's less than $35. I pay like $30 a month now. But you can get one or two, like a Netflix or a Hulu or whatever your family wants, for a pretty reasonable price. And then you could also go over the air. Now, a lot of people kind of look at me when I teach this workshop in person like I'm crazy. A lot of young people actually don't even know you can get TV for free because it's always been a paid model their whole life. So you can get your basic channels, and now with digital, there's like way more than just the 4 or 5 channels from my childhood. There are a lot of channels digitally that you can get with a simple digital receiver, which you can get at a big box store. And it's not forever, right? We're not asking you to give up TV or cable or whatever for your whole life, but maybe for a year, maybe for 2 or 5 years. And you don't have to go from premium cable to over the air, what we used to call rabbit ears. You can go somewhere in between because you can find $50 way before you're at that bottom rung. But if you just really want to go extreme and challenge yourself to find those free options and free up as much money as you can. So that is something that you can take a look all throughout your budget and figure out ways that you can use this step-down practice and find what's right for your family, okay? So again, it may be from premium cable to basic, and we just have to live with that for, a couple of years. It may be you're already at basic and you take that step to get down to streaming, etc. So think about it and what's right for your family, and have that family meeting and discuss it as a family so nobody is making like a unilateral decision. All right, so now let's talk about this concept of a family CFO. So family CFO, that stands for Chief Financial Officer. At a company, the Chief Financial Officer is in charge of accounting, they're in charge of finance and investments for the corporation. So a family CFO, what do they do? Well, there's some things that I'd like to suggest they can do, and some things I would like to suggest that they not do. So the family CFO is really the person who should take a hard look at the budget, and if you don't have one, create one. You can use a lot of budgeting tools online. You can go to the library and check out a budgeting book. You can go to webinars and classes. We offer those, and so do many others. You can read personal finance blogs, but you can find out how to budget, and then you should create a budget maybe on a spreadsheet or on some kind of online tool or an app on your phone. And then that person really needs to be the one that gets the family on board, all on the same page, and then is the one that's monitoring things. Because you can say, okay, we're going to spend X and Y and Z, and we're going to stick to this budget. But if you're never sort of checking against it to see, is that working for everyone? Is it realistic? Did something happen that made you go over, or did you have a really good month and you were under? Those are the things that the family CFO wants to do, because it's one thing to create a budget on a piece of paper and shove it in a drawer. It's another thing to really be monitoring it and actively focused on it. Now, that's not to say that the CFO is like, the cop, the police person who tells everybody they can't have any fun and they can't do anything. That's not their job. Also, maybe the family CFO's job is to call the meeting and say, hey guys, we're off of our track. Let's talk about how we can get back on. But they are not, the fun police. They also really are not the ones who should be paying all the bills and doing everything to the exclusion of other members of the family. Everybody in the family should know what's due when and how much and where, like the passwords for the accounts and things like that, because you don't want anybody to be the person with the knowledge and something happens to them, they get sick or have some other situation, and then everyone else is in the dark. So that's not good either. So the family CFO should keep everybody on track. The family CFO should be the one, just kind of taking the lead, but that doesn't mean others in the family are absolved of responsibility. Okay? And sometimes that's going to be, a husband, sometimes it's going to be a wife, sometimes that's going to be, maybe you have someone else in the household if you have extended family or whatever. There's no right or wrong. It's who's comfortable doing it. Like in this case, there's a person here, maybe this man is deploying, so the wife is the one back home, and it makes sense for her to do it. And so, every situation is different. All right, let's take a quick look at budgeting. You can get spreadsheets, you can get apps, you can get things that take you through budgeting all of your expenses. But the basics of budgeting are simple. It's how much is coming in, and that's your net income or your take-home pay, and how much is going out, which are all of your expenses, including those periodic things that we sometimes forget about, like oil changes or inspections, license plate type things, things that only happen, once in a while. If you don't know how much you spend on things like groceries or eating out or stuff like that, then you need to track it for a month and keep a record, especially of things that you're paying cash for. So you just carry a notebook with you. You don't have to buy a fancy thing. You don't have to buy some fancy tool. You can download free apps. There's probably some paid ones too. But just like a piece of paper and a pen in your car with you can go a long way, or put it in your purse or your pocket or whatever, and track your receipts. So it's easy to do. And then you basically subtract your expenses from your income. If your income and your outgo are out of alignment, like in this case, my expenses exceed my income, then I have a deficit. And how is that possible? How can I spend more than I have? Well, the answer to that question is credit. This is what's happened to the Alvarez family. They have been supplementing their income with credit. So they are spending more every month than they make, and the way they do that is through their credit card. So if this is your situation, then you're going to need to take a look at the step-down spending. You're going to need to take a look at ways to make changes just to get to even, just to get your take-home pay and your expenses to match. Once you do that, then you need to go beyond that to find the amplifier. That's just quick budgeting. So that $150 deficit, again, is where the Alvarez family is, running into trouble. So they're going to have to really find probably $200. They're going to have to get that budget under control, and then they're also going to need to find an amplifier to start paying down their debt. All right, so now they have done that. They had their family meeting, they did their step-down spending, they started to pay off their credit card debt, and now they actually are at the end of that. They have paid it all off. So what do they do next? Do they take that $387 and release it into the wild? No, they don't. They do not take that money and say, woohoo, we've got extra money, let's go do stuff. No, they take that same money for 13 more months. They, through something like a direct deposit from their employer, they put that money straight into savings. If they put the money into savings for 13 months with $387, then they are going to have a little over $5,000 at the end of that 13 months. They're not really worried about the interest. You can see here their savings account is paying like 1%, which means they just earn like $25 on their whole investment. That's really not their purpose. Their purpose is to save money for emergencies. They don't want to be back where they were, putting things on their credit card when something comes up, like the tires or the dog has to go to the vet and ends up costing you, a lot of money unexpectedly. They don't want those kind of things to derail their overall savings and strategy that they've now developed. So they've committed to allowing that $387 to go totally into savings for another 13 months. Now, maybe after that, they make some changes in their budget. They they ramp back up on some of those things that they've stepped down on, and maybe they save a smaller amount. So that's up to them as a family. There is another strategy as well. It's called the 52 Step Up Savings Challenge. So they could do this. They could save $1 the first week, $2 the second week, $3 the third week, etc., all the way up to 52 weeks. If you do that, then at the end of 52 weeks, you end up with a little over $1,300, which again is a great start on an emergency savings account. That would take care of most emergencies that people run into that they are having to pull out credit to account for right now. So you can do the rapid recovery savings type plan, or you can do something like a 52-week step-up challenge, or you can put together your own savings strategy. Can you fast track other kinds of debt? That is a typical question that we get, and the answer to that is yes. Most types of loans do not have what's called a prepayment penalty, but some might. Cars and home loans, it's not real common, but those types of clauses in loans do exist. So before you start any kind of accelerated payoff of any other kinds of debt, after you've tackled your credit card debt, then you can do that. So you should look at your loan documents. Student loans can always be paid ahead. They can be paid down and paid off early. Mostly cars and homes can as well. So you could start a fast track rapid repayment strategy for other kinds of debt as well as credit cards, in addition to or after you've paid down those credit cards, which are usually going to have the highest interest rate. Okay? Other kinds of debt, other kinds of loans that you have. You should definitely look at that. Well, let's talk about that long-term impact of debt. Because really, okay, we've looked at how much we could save, and that's awesome. But what are some of the other differences that it's making in the Alvarez family that they may not really even think about? Well, to highlight that, let's look at the Jones family. So the first thing I want to point out about the Jones and the Alvarez family is that, they're fairly similar. Joneses have 2 kids, Alvarez is about to have 2 kids, and most importantly, they make the exact same amount of money in their household. Each household grosses $72,000 a year, which is a $6,000 monthly gross income. They take home different amounts, and actually the Jones family takes home less. The Jones family takes home $3,300 and the Alvarez family takes home $4,400. But there are some differences. So you can see that the Jones family is consistently putting $1,500 into their 401k, which does change their tax liability a little bit because they're putting money in their pre-tax savings, so their pre-tax income is coming down a little bit. But all other things sort of being equal, the Jones family is bringing home less. So let's look at their budget. The Jones family brings home less, but their budget is livable. And the main reason is because of the debt payments. The Joneses, they don't have any debt. They are not making that $387, almost $400 a month payment to their creditors. And so because of that, they're able to contribute to their 401k. They're even able to save a little after tax, like for a vacation or some other goal that they have, small goal. Some of their things are less. You can see entertainment is significantly less. Their cell phone is less. A few other items are less. But the big difference, the Alvarez family is living it a little large in some of their categories, some of their discretionary spending, but they also are not saving, and they're paying a lot of money. They don't feel like they can save. They don't feel like they can do their 401k because of their debt. So what does that do over time? Let's take a look. All right, so the Jones family, if they just start saving today, let's say they weren't even saving when they were in their 20s, but if they just start saving today at age 30 and they save that $1,500 a month pre-tax, and they get an employer match, so that is free money, that's 100% return on the money they're putting in, they are going to take advantage of their employer match, and even with a conservative investment return of 5% over 40 years, or 37 years, they are going to have $2.1 million at the end. and an after-tax payout for an income stream of about $100,000. Of course, this is for educational purposes, and this is not investment advice, but this is a fairly conservative return. We're not talking about anything crazy here. By contrast, the Alvarez family are only contributing that $100 a month. They're not getting full advantage of their employer match because of that. So at a similar return, they're only going to have $192,000 in their savings in their retirement when they need to start withdrawing it, and their payout is only going to be $11,000 if they sort of do an annuity type situation to have that income stream remaining over a period of say 10 or 20 years. So they're not going to have a lot to take out, and they don't have a lot in total. But let's say today they decide, all right, we're changing our fortunes, we're changing our future. We are going to pay down that debt, and we are going to start contributing the maximum towards our 401k when we get it paid off, which would be 5 years from now. So they're going to put in $18,000. Okay, I see I have a typo here. It says 1,800. That should say 18,000. So they are going to put in the maximum. They're going to put in the 1,500 every year. The maximum changes, so it'll probably go up. They're going to get full advantage of that employer match, and they're going to get a similar return. But waiting that 5 years to be able to contribute, look at the difference. They're only going to have 1.5, a little less than 1.6 million, which is a lot of money, but it's significantly less than the Jones family. So waiting that 5 years to be able to contribute really hurts them in the long term on the back end because of what we call the time value of money. And just putting that little bit in over a long period of time begins to compound and earn you a bigger return. So the cost of credit is not simply the interest that it's costing you up front and over the time period when you're repaying it, but likely if you're like most people and you have that debt and you have that in your budget every month and you're having to pay those minimum payments, you feel like you can't do other things. You can't achieve your goals. You can't achieve your dreams, and you can't save for retirement. And because you feel that way, you really are shortchanging yourself by quite a bit of money over the long term. So let's recap. The first thing we want to talk about is that we assess our situation. We create those family goals. We talk about it as a family. We look at our starting point and determine our priorities. Got to know where we are in order to know how to get where we want to be. The second thing we do is just list all the credit cards. We may have never done that before. We may have never totaled it up, or maybe we have. Either way, we list them all out. We list the balance, the interest rate, the minimum payment. And then do what we call the rapid recovery plan. So we choose our payment method, either the rapid account reduction or the rapid interest pay down. We choose one of those options and we set ourselves to paying down our debt. Now to do that, we need to find that amplifier, and we may need to adjust our budget. We need to do that step down spending. We need to choose less expensive alternatives. We can look at all of our different categories, and we can set some targets and some timelines so our family knows it's not forever. And then we need to make sure our budget is in line. If we don't have a budget, we need to create one. If we do have a budget, we need to review it. We need to look at all of those things, our fixed expenses that are the same every month, our variable things that change like groceries, and even those periodic things like our license tags and our oil changes and things like that. And we want to address the deficit. If we are spending more than we are bringing home, we need to go back to step down spending. We need to look at all our categories and see what we need to cut. And then when we have finished that rapid pay down and our debts are no longer in our budget, we need to start saving. We want to use either the rapid recovery savings, or we want to do the 52-week savings challenge to at least save $1,000 or $2,000 towards emergencies. And then we really want to look at making sure our longer term plans, our retirement plans, those sorts of things are in play so that we are taking full advantage of our money. All right, so I'm going to pause this real quick just for a second. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up I want to show you a debt snowball calculator. So this is my my screen here, and I've pulled up this debt calculator called Undebt It. And this is not an endorsement or a recommendation. There are a lot of these out there, and you can do any of them. So you can just Google debt payoff calculator, debt snowball calculator, debt avalanche. You may have heard snowball and avalanche. That's the same as our account pay down or interest pay down. That's the same type of thing. So let me show you how these work. So you put in your payoff amount, as you can see here. Oops. Like you put in each of your cards. So this would be like the Alvarez family. And in this case, I've put in 3 cards and I've got them high interest to low interest, got their minimum payments and their current balance. And then I'm going to put in how much I can pay towards the debt. So if I looked at these minimum payments, they would be $290, but I'm going to put in 50 extra. So I'm going to put in 340. When can I start? And which option do I want? The snowball or the avalanche? Or some others. There are other ones. So I'm going to say I want to do highest interest, and then I'm going to push the button, and it's going to show me like this one's going to pay off after 24 months, and then the next one's going to pay off, and the next one, etc., until they're all paid off. So with this debt, I'm going to pay $18,000 principal and interest. That's $6,000 in interest, and I'm going to be debt free in 52 months. Versus on the left, if I were only paying the minimum, I would pay $20,000 overall. That's $9,000 in interest, and it would take me 77 months. So you can see how that works. And then let's say I'm able to even put a little bit more towards this debt. I push the go button, and it's going to recalculate for me. And I can come down here to the bottom, and I can see, well, that can get me down to 40 months, and it can get me down to $4,600 that I'm paying in interest. So you can play with it. You can see different amounts of money. You can see different choices, like the lowest balance versus the highest interest, if those are different. You can see how it changes a little. See, that one changes to 41 months instead of 40 months, a little bit more in interest. So you can choose different methods. You can choose different amounts. And then you can do sort of this what-if simulator. And a lot of people really like to do that. And I recommend it. And again, there are a number of these sort of calculators out on the internet, and so you can just search for it and find that. Lastly, I'd also like to point out, going to the Empower series and going to the website and going to the event section, which is right up here, you can go to the events and you can see the upcoming events in Houston and in Dallas. Of course, here is our webinar, our workshop that sadly was canceled. But it is being replaced by this webinar, and then you can see some other upcoming events. There's great information out here for you. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation today, and thank you to the Empower series, and thank you for participating. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for watching our Empower Series YouTube video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit the subscribe button below, as well as the little button to be notified the next time we upload our video. Until then, stay connected with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media flavor is. Inspire the world to thrive. See you soon.